The fluorescent lights of Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital's maternity ward cast harsh shadows across the ultrasound room where Sarah Mitchell sat, her hands protectively cradling her 7-month pregnant belly. At 32, she still possessed the refined beauty that had first caught Richard's attention 15 years ago, though now her hazel eyes carried a weariness that makeup couldn't hide. The door burst open. Richard Mitchell strode in 40 minutes late, his Armani suit immaculate but carrying an unfamiliar perfume that wasn't his cologne. At 40, Richard embodied success. Sharp jawline, salt and pepper hair, styled to perfection, the confidence of a man who believed the world bent to his will. Traffic was murder, he said. Not meeting her eyes. Checking his Rolex. As if he had somewhere more important to be. Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. This is the third appointment you've missed, Richard. The third. Christ. Sarah. Not this again. I'm building an empire. You think the Mitchell development deals close themselves? His voice carried that dismissive tone she'd grown to despise. Our baby needs a father who can provide. That's what I'm doing. He scrolled through his phone, barely present even now. Sarah stood, her pregnancy making the movement deliberate and careful. No, Richard. Our baby needs a father who shows up, who cares enough to see the ultrasound, to hear the heartbeat, enough. Richard's hands slammed against the wall, making her flinch. I don't need lectures from someone who's never worked a day in her life. You live in the penthouse I bought, wear the jewelry I chose, spend the money I earn. The least you could do is show some gratitude instead of this constant nagging. Sarah felt the familiar sting of his words, but today something was different. Maybe it was the hormones. Maybe it was the accumulation of 15 years of diminishment. Or maybe it was the tiny life kicking inside her, giving her strength she didn't know she had. Gratitude? Her voice rose as she followed him into the hallway. For what, Richard? For the loneliness? For the locked bank accounts? For the way you've systematically cut me off from every friend, every opportunity, The slap came without warning. The sound echoed through the pristine hospital corridor like a gunshot. Sarah's head snapped to the side, her hand flying to her cheek as she stumbled backward. A nurse gasped. An elderly patient in a wheelchair stared in shock. 2 doctors frozen mid-conversation. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Richard's hand hung in the air, his face a mixture of rage and sudden realization of what he'd done. Not remorse, just calculation of consequences. Sarah, he started, reaching for her. Don't touch me. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of finality. A thin trickle of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, where her teeth had cut the inside of her cheek. Tommy Rodriguez, the security guard who'd worked the maternity ward for 8 years, had seen a lot of domestic situations. But something about this one made his blood run cold. He remembered the distinguished older gentleman who'd visited last month. William Hartford, Sarah's father. The man had slipped him a business card, with instructions that now seemed prophetic. If anything happens to my daughter, anything at all, you call me immediately. Tommy didn't hesitate. As Richard tried to grab Sarah's arm, as nurses rushed to intervene, as the scene descended into controlled chaos, Tommy stepped into a quiet corner and dialed the number on that card. 3 rings, then a voice like controlled thunder. William Hartford. Mr. Hartford, sir. This is Tommy Rodriguez, from Manhattan Presbyterian. Your daughter. There's been an incident. Is she hurt? Her husband struck her, sir. In the middle of the hospital corridor. It's all on camera. The silence on the other end was more terrifying than any shouting could have been. When William Hartford finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Get my daughter somewhere safe. Keep her there. I'm sending my car. And Tommy? Yes, sir? Make sure that security footage is preserved. Every second of it. In his corner office overlooking Central Park, William Hartford ended the call and stood slowly. At 65, he was still an imposing figure. 6'2", silver-haired, with the bearing of a man who'd built a Fortune 500 company from nothing. He'd tolerated Richard for Sarah's sake, watched his daughter dim her light to avoid her husband's shadows. But this was the end. He pressed his intercom. Patricia, clear my schedule and get Marcus Webb on the line. Tell him I need everything, and I mean everything, on Richard Mitchell by tonight." Back at the hospital, Dr. Patricia Chen had guided Sarah into a private examination room. The woman who sat on the examination table was a shadow of the vibrant girl who'd once lit up charity galas with her laugh. Dr. Chen checked Sarah's blood pressure, noting the dangerous elevation. "Mrs. Mitchell, this level of stress. It could trigger premature labor. You need to understand the seriousness. It's not the first time," Sarah said quietly, staring at her wedding ring. "Just the first time in public." Dr. Chen's expression hardened. "How long?" The control started almost immediately after the wedding. Small things at first. "He didn't like my friends. They were bad influences. My job at the art gallery was beneath us. The joint account became his account that I had to ask permission to use. Every purchase questioned. Every decision scrutinized." Sarah's hand went to her belly. "I thought having a baby would change things. Make him softer. But it's only gotten worse. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" Sarah's phone buzzed. Her father's name on the screen felt like a lifeline. "Dad? The car is waiting outside, sweetheart. You're coming home. And Sarah? You're never going back to him." Never. For the first time in years, Sarah felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Richard, meanwhile, was in the hospital administrator's office, trying to do what he did best, control the narrative. It was a misunderstanding. "My wife is emotional. Pregnancy hormones. You understand. I'm sure we can handle this discreetly." The administrator, a thin man named Gerald Foster, shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Mitchell, there were dozens of witnesses. The security footage can be lost. Files corrupt all the time." Richard pulled out his checkbook. "What would it take to ensure this unfortunate incident doesn't become a bigger issue? 50,000? 100? I'm sure the hospital could use a donation for its new wing." What Richard didn't know was that Tommy Rodriguez was already making copies of that footage, that William Hartford's legal team was already in motion, that the threads of his carefully constructed life were about to unravel. As Sarah was helped into her father's Bentley, she looked back at the hospital where her marriage had effectively ended. 15 years. 15 years of making herself smaller, quieter, less threatening to his ego. 15 years of financial abuse disguised as protection. Emotional manipulation dressed as love. The drive to her father's penthouse was silent, except for the occasional concerned glance from James, her father's driver who'd known her since she was 16. When they pulled up to the building, William was waiting in the lobby, his presence commanding even in casual clothes. "Daddy," she whispered, and suddenly she was crying. Huge, body-shaking sobs that she'd held back for so long. William Hartford held his daughter as she cried, his jaw clenched with controlled fury. Over her shoulder, he spoke to Patricia Thornton, his chief legal counsel, who'd appeared as if summoned by his rage alone. "I want everything. Every contract his company has with us. Every loan he's taken. Every asset he's hidden. And Patricia? I want him destroyed. Legally, financially, completely." Patricia nodded, her tablet already out. "The moral turpitude clause in our contracts. Activate it. All of them. Tonight." In her father's guest room that night, Sarah lay awake, her hand on her belly, feeling her baby kick. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I let him do this to us for so long, but it's over now. I promise you, it's over." She didn't know that Marcus Webb, the private investigator and former FBI agent her father had hired, was already uncovering a web of deceit that went far deeper than even she suspected. The offshore accounts in the Caymans, the apartment in Tribeca under Victoria Castillo's name, Richard's mistress of 3 years, the $2,700,000 in loans he'd taken, using their forged joint signatures, loans that would come due in weeks. Richard arrived home to their penthouse, expecting Sarah to be there, already formulating his apology strategy. Flowers, jewelry, perhaps a weekend in the Hamptons. Instead, he found William Hartford sitting in his living room, flanked by 2 lawyers, and holding a folder that would end life as Richard knew it. "William," Richard started, attempting his charming smile. "This is all a misunderstanding. Sarah and I." "Sit down, Richard." William's voice could have frozen hell. "This is my home. You can't." "Actually, it's Sarah's home. Her name is on the deed, purchased with Hartford family money that you've been steadily draining." William opened the folder. "Should we start with the embezzlement or the adultery?" Richard's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus Webb stepped forward, laying out photograph after photograph. Victoria Castillo entering the Tribeca apartment. Bank statements showing mysterious transfers. Contracts with forged signatures. "Here's what's going to happen," William said, his voice deadly calm. "Every contract between Hartford Industries and your company is terminated as of this moment. The moral turpitude clause you signed gives us that right. Your loans that used our contracts as collateral are being called in. Your accounts are frozen, pending investigation of fraud. You can't do this." Richard exploded, his mask finally slipping completely. "I made Sarah who she is. Without me, she's nothing but a spoiled princess playing at being a wife. That baby she's carrying? It wouldn't exist without me. I own her." Patricia Thornton smiled coldly. "And that statement was just recorded. Thank you for making our case even stronger." As they left, William turned back one final time. "You had everything, Richard. A brilliant, loving wife. A baby on the way. A successful business partnership. And you threw it all away because you couldn't see Sarah as anything more than a possession. Now you'll learn what it feels like to lose everything." The next morning, Richard woke to find his world in ruins. His phone exploded with calls from banks, partners, creditors. The news had somehow leaked. Mitchell Development, in crisis. After Hartford Industries pulls contracts. His secretary called to inform him that Victoria Castillo was in the office, crying, demanding to know why he told her he was divorced when he wasn't. Sarah, meanwhile, was meeting with Patricia Thornton and a team of the city's best divorce attorneys. The evidence Marcus Webb had gathered was overwhelming. "He's been siphoning money from your joint accounts for years," Patricia explained, showing Sarah spreadsheet after spreadsheet. "Nearly $8 million, transferred to accounts you never knew existed." $8 million? Sarah couldn't comprehend it. "But he always said we needed to be careful with money. That I spent too much. Classic financial abuse. He controlled the narrative to keep you dependent and unaware." That afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived at William's penthouse. Victoria Castillo, 28, beautiful in that carefully maintained way that required significant investment, stood nervously in the foyer. "I didn't know he was married," she said immediately upon seeing Sarah. "He told me you were divorced, that you were crazy and trying to take him for everything. He showed me fake divorce papers. I only found out the truth yesterday when the news broke." Sarah studied the younger woman, seeing herself 15 years ago. Trusting, believing in a man who was an expert at selling lies. "He's been paying for your apartment for 3 years, Sarah said. It wasn't a question. Victoria nodded, tears streaming. "And my car. My credit cards. Everything. Just like." She paused, then pulled out her phone. "There are others. I found them online. Jennifer Walsh in Boston. Rebecca Chen in Philadelphia. We all have the same story. He found us young, vulnerable. Promised us the world. Made us dependent. Then when we got too old, too wise, too inconvenient, he moved on." William had been listening from the doorway. "Would you testify to this in court?" Victoria straightened. "Yes, and so will the others. We've been talking. We want to stop him from doing this again." The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Richard had hired Maxwell Sterling, known as the Destroyer for his ability to demolish wives in divorce court. But even Sterling seemed unsettled by the mountain of evidence against his client. Sarah took the stand on a gray Tuesday morning, the courtroom packed with media and women's advocacy groups who'd taken up her cause. She wore a simple black dress that showed her pregnancy clearly, her voice steady as she recounted 15 years of systematic abuse. It started small, she said, looking directly at the judge, not at Richard. He didn't like my friend Melissa because she was divorced, said she might give me ideas. Then it was my college roommate Amanda, who was too career-focused. One by one, he isolated me from everyone who might have told me what was happening wasn't normal. And financially? Her attorney prompted. Everything was joint. But only he had the passwords. When I needed money for groceries, I had to ask. When I wanted to buy maternity clothes, I had to justify it. He would interrogate me about every purchase while hiding millions in offshore accounts and spending hundreds of thousands on his mistresses. Objection. Sterling stood. Alleged mistresses. Sustained, the judge said, though his expression suggested he wasn't buying it. Dr. Patricia Chen testified next, her medical opinion carrying devastating weight. Mrs. Mitchell's stress levels were dangerously high, threatening both her and the baby. Since separating from Mr. Mitchell, her blood pressure has normalized, her anxiety has decreased markedly. The improvement is directly correlated to the removal of the abusive situation. Then came the parade of other women. Jennifer Walsh, a graphic designer from Boston, told how Richard had convinced her to quit her job, then left her with nothing when she turned 30. Rebecca Chen, the daughter of immigrants who'd worked her way through Penn, described how Richard had preyed on her insecurity about fitting into high society, then discarded her when she gained confidence. Victoria Castillo's testimony was perhaps the most damaging. She produced text messages, emails, recordings of Richard describing his wife as a necessary evil and the price of respectability. Richard's attorney tried to paint the women as gold diggers, opportunists, but the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage from the hospital played on the courtroom screens, the slap resonating through the speakers. Several jury members visibly flinched. When Richard took the stand, his usual charm had curdled into barely concealed rage. These women are conspiring against me. Sarah's father has orchestrated this entire— Mr. Mitchell, the judge interrupted. Are you denying that this is you in the security footage striking your pregnant wife? She was hysterical. I was trying to calm her. By hitting her. It was a mistake. A moment of frustration. But to destroy my entire life over one moment. Sarah's attorney stood. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that this was not one moment, but a pattern of behavior spanning 2 decades and affecting multiple women. The financial forensics expert testified about the hidden assets, the forged signatures, the systematic draining of marital funds. By the time he finished, Richard's attorney looked like he wanted to flee the courtroom. William Hartford watched it all from the gallery, his presence a silent reminder of the power behind Sarah. But this wasn't about his influence. It was about truth finally being heard. Sarah gave her closing statement directly to Richard, though she addressed the court. For 15 years I disappeared piece by piece. My opinions were too loud, so I whispered. My dreams were too big, so I shrank them. My friends were too dangerous, so I lost them. I told myself it was love, that he was protecting me. But love doesn't hit. Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't make you smaller. It makes you grow. I want my daughter to be born into a world where she knows that truth from her first breath. The judge's decision came swift and harsh. Sarah was awarded 75% of all marital assets, full custody of the child with supervised visitation for Richard only after completing anger management and parenting classes, restoration of all stolen funds, and significant alimony and child support. But the judge wasn't finished. Mr. Mitchell, this court finds your deliberate concealment of assets and forgery of documents to constitute fraud. You are sentenced to 30 days in county jail. Sentenced to begin immediately. The courtroom erupted. Richard's face went from red to white to purple as bailiffs approached. You can't do this. I'm Richard Mitchell. I built an empire. That woman is nothing without me. Nothing. As he was led away, Sarah stood, one hand on her belly. Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement. The judge nodded. Financial abuse is real. It's not just about money. It's about power, control, and the systematic dismantling of another person's autonomy. I was lucky. I had a father with resources to fight back. But thousands of women don't. They stay trapped because they literally cannot afford to leave. I'm establishing the Margaret Hartford Foundation, named for my daughter, to provide financial literacy, education, and emergency funds for women escaping financial abuse. The courtroom erupted in applause, despite the judge's attempts to maintain order. Outside, reporters surrounded Sarah. But she said only one thing. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. And the truth is that no one should have to choose between poverty and abuse. The story went viral within hours. The hashtag number #LoveDoesn'tHit trended globally. Women from around the world shared their stories of financial abuse, finding strength in Sarah's courage. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to Margaret Rose Mitchell, a healthy 7-pound baby girl with her mother's eyes. And, everyone said, her grandfather's determined chin. Richard, serving his sentence, wasn't there. He wouldn't meet his daughter until she was 6 months old, and only under court supervision. The Margaret Hartford Foundation launched with an initial endowment of $5 million from William Hartford and surprising additional funding from Victoria Castillo, who'd used her settlement from Richard to start a successful consulting firm, helping women achieve financial independence. The first woman the foundation helped was Amanda Peterson, a teacher from Queens whose husband had hidden their savings and taken loans in her name. The foundation's legal team helped her win her case and gain full custody of her children. Amanda now volunteers as a counselor, helping other women recognize the signs of financial abuse. By the foundation's first anniversary, it had helped over 300 women escape abusive financial situations. Sarah spoke at conferences, testified before Congress about the need for stronger financial abuse laws, and became the face of a movement she'd never intended to start. Jennifer Walsh started a design company and created the foundation's visual identity pro bono. Rebecca Chen went to law school, inspired to help other women fight back. Victoria Castillo's consulting firm partnered with the foundation, offering free financial planning to abuse survivors. Richard, meanwhile, watched his empire crumble from a studio apartment in Queens. Mitchell Development declared bankruptcy. His country club membership was revoked. His society friends disappeared like smoke. He sent letter after letter to Sarah, alternating between threats and pleas, all intercepted by her legal team. 5 years after that day in the hospital, Sarah stood before another packed auditorium, this time delivering a keynote speech at the International Conference on Domestic Violence Prevention. Margaret, now a precocious 5-year-old with an independent streak that delighted her grandfather, sat in the front row between William and, surprisingly, Victoria Castillo, who'd become an unexpected friend and foundation board member. People ask me if I regret those 15 years, Sarah said to the audience. I don't. Because those years, as painful as they were, led me here. They gave me Margaret. They gave me purpose. They taught me that survival isn't just about getting out. It's about helping others see the door exists. After the speech, Sarah was approached by a young woman, nervous, wearing sunglasses indoors to hide what Sarah recognized immediately as the remnants of a black eye. My husband. He controls everything. I don't even know how much money we have. But I heard you speak, and I thought, maybe. Sarah took the woman's hands. What's your name? Christine. Christine. You've already done the hardest part. You've recognized it's not okay. Let me introduce you to Patricia. She's going to help you understand your options. You're not alone anymore. As Sarah watched Patricia lead Christine to a quiet corner, she felt Margaret tug on her dress. Mama, why was that lady sad? Sarah knelt down to her daughter's level. Someone was mean to her, sweetheart. But she's brave. And she's going to be okay. Like you were brave. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Even at 5, Margaret understood more than she should have to. Yes, baby. Like I was brave. And like you'll always be brave. Because you know that nobody has the right to make you feel small. That evening, Sarah stood on the terrace of her new apartment, one she'd bought with her own money from her speaking engagements and book deal. The city sparkled below, full of millions of stories, some of triumph, some of struggle, many of both. Her phone buzzed. An email from her publisher about the book tour for When Love Hits, a survivor's guide to financial abuse. Another from a senator wanting her to testify about proposed legislation. A text from Victoria about the Foundation's annual gala planning. But before she could respond to any of them, Margaret appeared in her frozen pajamas, clutching a teddy bear. "Mama, will you tell me a story?" Sarah lifted her daughter, breathing in her shampoo-sweet smell. "What kind of story would you like?" "One about a princess who saves herself." Sarah smiled. "I know just the one." As she carried Margaret to bed, Sarah caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the scared, diminished person who'd sat in that hospital room 5 years ago. This woman stood tall, spoke truth, and had turned her pain into power. The fairy tale she told Margaret that night wasn't about Prince Charming or magical kisses. It was about a princess who discovered she had her own sword, her own castle, her own army of other princesses who'd learned to fight. It was about the power of truth, the strength of survival, and the courage to not just save yourself, but to throw the rope back down for others. Margaret fell asleep halfway through, but Sarah kept talking. The story as much for herself as for her daughter. And the princess learned that real love, the love of family, of friends, of yourself, doesn't diminish you. It makes you grow. It makes you strong. It makes you free. In the living room, her father was waiting with tea, their evening ritual when he visited. "She's going to be formidable," William said, nodding toward Margaret's room. "She already is," Sarah replied. "Sometimes I worry I've made her too aware of the world's dangers." "You've made her aware of her own strength. There's a difference." William paused. "I'm proud of you, Sarah, not just for surviving, but for what you've built from that survival." Later that night, after her father left, Sarah received an unexpected call. It was Tommy Rodriguez, the security guard from the hospital. "Miss Hartford? I mean, Miss Mitchell? I'm sorry to call so late." "It's fine, Tommy. And it's just Sarah. What can I do for you?" "It's my daughter. She's in a situation like yours was. Her boyfriend, he controls all the money, won't let her work. I remembered what you did. Your foundation. Would you help her? Give me her information. We'll call her first thing tomorrow." After she hung up, Sarah realized this was her life now. A network of survivors and supporters, fathers and daughters, strangers bound by shared experience and mutual aid. It wasn't the life she'd planned when she'd walked down the aisle in Vera Wang. White, 22, and believing in forever. It was better. It was real. The next morning brought the usual chaos. Margaret demanding pancakes, emails from the foundation, a call from her editor about the book's film rights. But amid it all, a letter arrived that made Sarah's blood run cold. Richard's handwriting on expensive stationery. "I'm getting out next month. I've completed all court requirements. I want to see my daughter." Sarah's first instinct was panic. Then she remembered who she was now. She called Patricia, scheduled a meeting with her legal team, and began preparing. Not to run, not to hide, but to face him with the full force of the law and the truth on her side. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a family court mediation center with security and strict protocols. Sarah arrived with her legal team and her father. Richard came alone, looking older, grayer, somehow smaller than she remembered. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his voice missing its old commanding tone. "Richard, I've changed. The anger management, the therapy. I understand what I did wrong." Sarah studied him. Maybe he had changed. Maybe prison and poverty had taught him something. But that wasn't her concern anymore. "If you want to be in Margaret's life, you'll follow every court guideline. Supervised visits only. No overnight stays. No discussion of our marriage. No attempts to undermine my parenting. One violation. Just one. And we're back in court. She's my daughter. She's a little girl who deserves a father who can control himself. Prove you can be that. And we'll reassess in a year." The first visit was a disaster. Margaret, who'd never met him, clung to Sarah and refused to engage. The second was slightly better. By the fourth, she was showing him her drawings. though always with the supervisor close by. Sarah never attended these visits, but she heard the reports. Richard was trying, perhaps for the first time in his life, to think of someone else's needs before his own. Whether it would last, whether it was genuine, only time would tell. Meanwhile, the foundation grew. Corporate sponsors came forward. Other cities requested chapters. Sarah testified before Congress, her testimony leading to the Financial Abuse Prevention Act, making economic abuse a specific crime with real penalties. On the 5th anniversary of the hospital incident, Sarah was invited back to Manhattan Presbyterian to speak to their staff about recognizing signs of domestic abuse. Tommy Rodriguez introduced her, his daughter, now free from her abuser and working as a nurse, standing beside him. As Sarah spoke to the packed auditorium, she noticed Dr. Patricia Chen in the front row, nodding along. After the speech, the doctor approached. "You've saved lives, you know. Women come in now, mention your name, your foundation. They know they have options." That night, there was a celebration at the foundation's headquarters. Victoria Castillo had brought champagne. Jennifer Walsh had designed commemorative posters. Rebecca Chen, now a licensed attorney, had just won her first financial abuse case. 5 years ago, he tried to destroy us. Victoria raised her glass. Instead, he created an army. As they toasted, Margaret ran in, wearing a cape Sarah's assistant had made for her, declaring herself Captain Independence. The room erupted in laughter. But Sarah saw the deeper truth. Her daughter would grow up in a world where financial abuse had a name, where victims had resources, where survival stories were celebrated rather than hidden. Later, as the party wound down, Sarah found herself on the roof garden the foundation had installed, a peaceful space for clients to gather their thoughts. The city sprawled endlessly below, lights twinkling like stars brought to earth. Victoria joined her, surprisingly companionable for someone who'd once been the other woman. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't left?" Victoria asked. "I wouldn't have survived," Sarah said simply. "Not physically, maybe, but everything that makes me who I am would have died. I'm glad you didn't let that happen. We all are." As Victoria left, Sarah remained, thinking about the journey from victim to survivor to advocate. She thought about Richard, now working as a junior accountant at a firm that didn't care about his past, seeing Margaret once a week for 2 supervised hours. She thought about her father, whose fierce protection had given her the space to rebuild. She thought about all the women who'd reached out, sharing their stories, finding strength in community. Her phone buzzed, another woman reaching out to the foundation, another story of control and abuse, another opportunity to throw the rope down. Sarah smiled, a warrior smile, and headed back inside. There was work to do. The epilogue came 2 years later. Margaret, now 7, stood on stage at her school's career day, presenting about her mother's work. "My mom helps women who are being hurt by people who say they love them," Margaret said clearly, her grandfather's confidence evident. "She teaches them that real love doesn't hurt, doesn't control, doesn't make you small. She's a hero, but she says the real heroes are the women who ask for help." In the audience, Sarah wiped away tears. Beside her sat an unexpected guest, Richard, there by court-approved permission for this special occasion. He watched his daughter with something that might have been pride or regret, or both. After the presentation, Margaret ran to Sarah, cape flying behind her. "Did I do good, Mama?" "You did perfect, baby." Richard approached cautiously. "She's remarkable." "She is, Sarah." He started, then stopped. "Thank you for letting me see this." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough, but it was acknowledgement. And that was more than she'd ever expected. As they left the school, Margaret between them but holding only Sarah's hand, a woman approached. Young, nervous, familiar in that way, all survivors recognized each other. "You're Sarah Mitchell? From the foundation?" "I am. You saved my life. I just wanted to say thank you." As the woman walked away, Margaret looked up at her mother. "Mama, Are we going to save more people today? Sarah looked down at her daughter. Fierce, fearless, free, and smiled. Yes, baby, we are. The Foundation's motto, emblazoned on the wall of every office, said it all. Love doesn't hit. Love doesn't control. Love sets you free. And in the end, that truth had set them all free.